January 8th, 2013 at 7 p.m. We'll begin with roll call.
Dick Bonin.
Here.
Ken Killian.
Here.
Mike Delecky.
Here.
Patrice Steiner.
Here.
Steve Becker.
Here.
Barbara Doss.
Here.
Nylene Nichols.
Here.
Thank you. First on the agenda tonight is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate if you'd prefer separate discussion and action. Item A is the minutes of the December 12th, 2012 council meeting. Item B, payment of bills. Item C is financial statement. D is appointments to boards and commissions, working on somebody for the airport commission, but I don't have any tonight. E, licenses, the 1 and or 2 year operators licenses for premises licensed to traffic and fermented malt beverages and intoxicating liquors. Is there any item on the consent calendar in which you prefer separate discussion and action?
I do have a question on the minutes from the last meeting.
Want to pull those?
Move to approve the consent calendar with the minutes removed.
Second.
The motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Patrice, the minutes.
Okay, under information discussion, item B, it's the resolution and ordinance adopting assigned parking for downtown spaces. There was one line, it's down about 10 lines. Council appointed RDA member John Zilke of 235 East Dewey explained the task of the RDA. I didn't understand why Jan was council appointed RDA member.
Because he titled himself that way as the council-appointed RDA member
When he spoke.
when he spoke.
All of the RDA members are council appointed.
Okay, I thought it meant that the council appointed him like that night or that day or something. Okay, so council appointed is like a title. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions. If any, we have none tonight. Item 5 is reports. Committee reports, Water and Sewer Commission, Delecky, Killian, Steiner.
Nothing.
No addition.
Platteville Community Safe Routes Committee, Steiner.
Nope.
Parks, Forestry, Recreation Committee, Killian.
No addition.
Freudenreich Animal Trust Care Fund, Doss.
That is later on the agenda.
Okay. Under other reports, we have the airport financial statement for December, water and sewer revenue and expense report for December, city attorney itemized statement for December, building inspection report for December, administrative policies and procedures updated as of January 1st, fourth quarter staffing plan implementation report, department progress reports, and health care reform. Are there any items there in which you'd like to ask questions or make comments?
Does somebody, I saw the updated administrative policies and procedures. The updates were not highlighted. So is there something to compare that to?
We could supply a copy of the old version. Because each of the policies were handled individually, we did not keep a red-lined copy. Just about all of the policies have been updated to reflect new positions, new state regulations, as well as new procedures that have been put into place over the years. If any council member would like a copy of the old one, we have that available. Or if there's
Is it online? Is the old one online? I mean,
it's not right now. If you'd like it put online, we can.
or just a PDF, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Other questions or comments on those items? Okay, moving on then to action items. Item A is the Master Parks Plan. A brief staff presentation.
This is just the plan that we have to have on file to receive any grants from the DNR. It's been updated. It'll cover 2013 through 2017. Parks, Forestry, and Rec Committee and the Safe Routes Committee have both reviewed it, made updates. This is the final draft.
Any questions for Jordan?
I just saw at the end of the report, and I'm trying to find the last page. It's not so hard to do on, it's not so easy to do on the computer sometimes. Not that, not the appendices, but in the last page of the future development and growth. new parkland, and then future needs, and it would be on page 22 for those people who have that. Future needs and facilities, it's determined through the planning process, expansion of the fields at Legion Park, additional soccer fields.
When the horse arena was removed,
Pardon?
when the horse arena was removed,
Right?
there was discussion of adding a soccer field to that area.
So that wasn't done last year?
No,
And that's where you would see adding that soccer field.
correct.
And the shelter, renovated or new enclosed shelter.
Regarding the art hall,
Okay, so that would be the one that's currently in
it's currently there, but it's not ADA
whatever
accessible.
that park is called. Is there a reason you didn't put kind of where those were expected to be? Or,
I
I
can
mean,
certainly
you know,
do
when
that.
I look at new enclosed shelter for rent, you know, I'm like, where's that supposed to be and what are we talking about?
I can add that.
Is this specific to an individual park, or could it be any park?
It could be any. We could add a new enclosed shelter at any park. That's
So then you could
ADA.
add soccer fields at any park.
Correct.
So it isn't specific then?
It doesn't need to be, no.
Then
But this is for 5 or 10 years, right?
Correct.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
yes,
Galecki,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
Yes.
Doss,
yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Item B tonight is Resolution 13.01, establishing permitted parking locations within the city of Platteville. Do we have a staff description?
Staff has developed the enclosed resolution establishing assigned parking locations within the city of Platteville. As per direction and discussion, the resolution currently contains all of the lots that include 24-hour parking spaces, which is a total of 92 spaces. Previous discussion is $30 per month, or a total of $360 per year, payable in advance. And in the packet, we also included what the signs would look like so that the council has an idea of what we're looking at, as well as a draft brochure. At one of our meetings, we had a discussion about how this would be communicated to the public. And so we thought it'd be a good idea to put a brochure together to hand out to local businesses and to anyone inquiring about the assigned parking situation. At our last meeting, we had a discussion about reducing the number of spaces. And at this point, we're still waiting for a decision from the council as to whether you wish to reduce spaces or to continue as initially proposed.
Questions for Larry? Okay, thank you. Comment?
Well, I have a comment about the policy, the non-refundable. All parking fees paid are non-refundable, even if you vacate the space and no longer use it. The $360 is to be paid up front, and if somebody has to leave town, they could be out, you know, quite a bit of money. And I would think that that might be a deterrent for people not signing up for it if it's not refundable.
Can they sell it?
I don't think that was in here.
As a staff, we've had quite a bit of discussion about that issue. With 92 spaces, the staff and I decided that it'd probably be better if we had one person that was the contact for each space. So if they did decide to allow a friend or a family member to use their parking space, all of our communications would continue to go through one person. And then it would be up to them to disseminate the information to whomever they sublease it to, or whoever friends they allow in the space. I guess one of the conversation pieces that come to mind was if an individual leases a parking space and gives permission to a friend to use it, but then also gives permission to a family member, the family member may pull into the spot and say there's a car in there, and and call the police to have it towed, we would have no record of who is responsible for, or who is allowed to park in the space and who isn't. Our impression was that it would simply be easier to manage this system if we had one person responsible for each space. If the council desires, we could allow that person to change over time. If somebody didn't want to do a full year commitment, maybe we could do a 6-month commitment and then they change it. That's certainly something that that we're open to. I mean, if whatever you guys want.
I would remind the council that it was the RDA's original recommendation that that assigned parking or leases be sold in 6-month increments for that, which is kind of consistent with some of our downtown residents and the fact that they're here for a semester rather than perhaps for a full year. I think our original recommendation was January through June and July through December.
Well, I was the one, I think, that recommended the 1 year, but I didn't realize that, the non-refundable issue was gonna be thrown in.
I don't think there's a problem with 6 months, it works.
I've got a question on how, if we start this, I can't see doing all 92 of them at once. I think we should start with a small lot and see if it goes that way, because if we start all 92 of them at once, we've got 92 parking places downtown that nobody can use because they're reserved for somebody to purchase. And we're gonna go from now until June 1st, is that correct?
We will implement this whenever is feasible based on when you approve it. So if you decide to approve 30 spaces for the next 6 months, that's what staff will implement. Certainly we have to wait for your direction.
'Cause I can't see tying them all up and we got people complaining we don't have parking now, and then we're gonna tie them all up and wait for somebody to buy this one with this red number in it at whatever parking lot. So I think we should be considering more just starting out slow on this or a smaller number one, not all 92.
Yeah, I agree with Dick. See what the demand is, perhaps designate 1 or 2 lots. I was thinking 1 north of Main, 1 south of Main, and not tie up all 92 spaces also. Because I don't know what the true demand is out there.
Again, I would remind council that the RDA has recommended beginning with 1 lot, and that would be lot 7, which is 7 parking places numbered 86 to 92, located on the northeast corner of North 4th Street and East Furnace Street.
I agree with that.
Ken?
Okay, I believe that just starting with 7 is too small a number. I think we should start with the lot next to the post office, which is lot 5, and that's 26 stalls. And the other lot that I would include would be on Roundtree Avenue, which is 27 stalls. That is lot 6. And the reason I give, excuse me, these two is that, first of all, Roundtree Avenue, I see that lot pretty well all filled up all the time. Very few empty spaces. It's away from the main street as far as shoppers parking there. And then the other one is lot 5 next to the post office, 26 spaces. That one I see filled up pretty much all the time also. And also during, I might say that during the vacation, Christmas, the day of Christmas Eve, there were 14 cars in the lot by the post office, which to me indicates that quite a few of those spaces are taken up by tenants, and that if people were shopping downtown, supposedly they'd be filling up the spots. So I believe that lot 5 and lot 6 are occupied mainly by tenants, and it would have little effect upon the downtown as far as parking space. So at least I think 5 and 6 ought to be included. 7 stalls is too few to get a good idea.
But I still think that's a place to start. Otherwise, we're doing what is it, 53?
53.
53, and there's cars. Cars there most of the time now. Now if we start renting them out, how many of them cars are gonna be back there? They're gonna go find someplace else to park if they don't wanna rent a stall. That's why I think we gotta go a little bit slower at this on the small ones. But maybe I could agree with Patrice too, that we could, both sides of Main Street, pick one. Or I guess that was Ken's.
It seems to me that if you're gonna starting with the one that's the furthest away is the least desirable one to start with, because you're not gonna get a read on anything.
Right,
I
right.
think we ought to be something closer to Maine, rather than the very furthest one, and I'm not sure what 7's gonna tell us. I agree with Dick, I don't think all 92 at this point makes sense.
Well, I half agree with Ken. I was gonna go with lot 6, lot 5, behind the post office. That would be south of Maine, and then north of Maine would be this lot out here. What is that, number 1? Across the street from the police station. So that would be the one north of Maine.
Is that the lot 7, 7 spaces?
No.
No, the 21
Lot
spaces?
1, I believe, is the one
7
across-
is back here north of the police station.
I was gonna recommend 1 and 5. So it's similar to what you were thinking, Ken.
Other comments, Steve?
Well, I said at the last meeting, when we discussed this, that I didn't believe there was much of a demand for people to pay $30 for these spots. And it seems to me that, that I still don't believe the demand's there. And unless we are gonna close them all off and rent them all off so that people have no other choice where to go, they're not gonna rent anything here. And I don't believe in closing these all off. I think we should simply pick out the 7, see what happens, see if anybody rents them. We can come back, we can do that now tonight. Say, okay, we're gonna try to rent out 7. A month from now, we can come back. If they're all full up, we can rent 7 more out. We don't have to sit here and figure out where 50 of them are gonna be. Let's see what the demand is out there.
Yeah, we don't
Rent
have-
7, try to rent them, see if somebody takes it. If they do, then rent 7 more.
We don't have to quit just because we get the first 7 gone.
We can add on.
Yeah.
I just don't believe the demand's there.
From the very beginning of this, I've been kind of surprised at the vigor that people argue this issue with. And from my point of view, it's mostly been one of taxpayer-funded private usage, just like we see happening at Wall Street all the time, where we all pay for the bailouts, but only a few people get to benefit from them. We have the same kind of thing here, which is all of us pay for this parking, and all it does is subsidize the parking of a very few people downtown, and I've never found that to be a very smart public policy. Why should all of us pay so that some people get it for nothing? And that's not fair, it's never been fair, and it's never been reasonable. And so I think that just doing 7 to me is not gonna tell us much. If it doesn't rent, does that mean there's no demand, or that people are parking on the street someplace closer than walking all the way as far away as you possibly can get? I think some number in the middle makes more sense to me. I think all 92, I agree we ought to be phasing this in, but, you know, this is a taxpayer issue. Why should the taxpayers be subsidizing parking for people overnight? I wish somebody could explain to me why that's a good thing. I mean, maybe I'd change my mind if there was a good reason.
Well, Mike, let's just say you pick out 20 or 25,
Okay.
pick a number, whatever, pick a number 20, 25. So you say, okay, we're gonna rent out 25, all right, well, there's still 50 or more out there, and so why is somebody gonna pay for those 25 when they can go over and park for free at one of the other ones that we don't designate? Why are they gonna spend $30 to park and pay when they can go to
Well, if
another
you
lot
pick
and
a
not
number-
pay?
If you pick a number in the
The
middle.
only way you're gonna eliminate is eliminate all parking.
I'm out here. I'm having trouble with something here. If this phenomenon is true, then why on earth have we been talking about parking for the last 9 months?
Good question.
Which means
We should
either
be.
there's not a parking problem and we shouldn't have been talking about it,
There you go.
or there is. And when we tried to do, and this is, everybody in here is kind of laughed a little bit, and I understand why. But when we were talking about putting a development in on Bonson Street behind the post office, what was the single biggest scream that we heard from everybody? There's not enough parking. Now all of a sudden we find out there is. Well, you can't have it both ways. It's either that there's not enough or there is too much. But you can't have it both ways, and just picking 7 out here is not gonna accomplish anything. Maybe we should do nothing at all. But then I hope that if we come back and try to do another development, we don't get people back saying, oh my God, we don't have enough parking, because you can't have it both ways.
If I might relate some of the information that we heard at the RDA. Number one, the parking issues are related to people who live in the downtown area and work in the downtown area and have to park their cars overnight. That's what we heard. Or people who both live and work and own businesses downtown, and with the 24-hour spots have to constantly remember to go out and move their car from one 24-hour spot to a different 24-hour spot, because if they leave it in the same spot for more than 24 hours, they get a $20 parking ticket. And so it's those people who are very interested in finding a way that, because they don't have a property that has a parking spot, finding a way to lease a parking spot so that they don't have to worry about moving 2 or 3 cars or 4 cars or whatever from place to place to place.
So you're saying there is demand?
So I'm saying that there is a demand for overnight parking for residents who live downtown, and perhaps for business residents and/or residents and business owners who live downtown. And that's where the demand is.
So it's a question of what is the demand? There is a demand,
and
the question is how much?
Is how much, and that is something we can't gauge. Of course, if you ask people, are you willing to pay $30 to do that? They may say yes or no, I'm willing to pay 20, or I'm not, I'm willing to pay 4. Who knows what they're willing to pay? And in the, so I think that we have to look, we're not talking about shopping on Main Street, and we're talking about the demand for residents and business owners, and for this consistent parking that I don't have to, as if I'm living downtown and a business owner downtown, or a business owner, that I don't have to go out after 24 hours and move my car from this stall to the next stall. I don't use my car, I just want to put it there, I want to leave it there. I want to find some place to park it.
I agree,
Think that
that's why I'm saying
the
start with
7 lot
7.
idea is, if you have somebody in the southeastern part of downtown here, they want to walk all the way to the northwestern side to park their car, you got to split these up a little bit if you're going to really see if there's demand.
And maybe 7 on the east, or 6 on the north side of the street and 6 on the south side of the street, is fine. Maybe numbers 46 to 51 or whatever in lot 5, which is the one on South Bonson and South 4th, that would give, 6 or 7 on each side of the street and kind of in the middle, and then we could see how that would go.
Okay, motion.
Well, there's
let's-
people who want to
yeah,
talk, I
let's-
think, on this.
Yeah. We have 4 people that indicated they'd like to speak. Jack Lidke, followed by Rich Christensen, followed by Mike Oles, followed by Kathy Austin. So if you move toward that end of the room and come up to the microphone, please state your name and local address, and tell us what you think.
Don't,
46 to 51 or something
people
like that.
park someplace, don't they move their car within 24 hours? Go someplace with it?
Good evening. My name is Jack Lidke. I'm the Executive Director for the Main Street Program in Platteville. Our office is at 20 South 4th Street. Forgot where I lived. I would just like to address the fact tonight that some of the same thoughts that I mentioned the last council meeting, is that the RDA has been working on this for a very long period of time. Excuse me. And the idea of a test phase to address the demand in a reasonable way, if there is that demand, I think is something that you've already mentioned tonight is a good way for the council to go. Is it the best solution just to have 7 spots, as President Telecky indicated, as far away as possible? Probably not, but that is the direction and desire that was expressed through the RDA discussions to begin this. And I will remind you that Alderman Nichols over a year and a half ago suggested a test of approximately the same number of stalls, but in this lot, which never really came to fruition. And I think that's the right way for the council to address this. I also wanted to mention something about President Dalecki's comment about the city providing free parking spaces for people in the downtown area for all these years. I think one of the things you can't overlook is that you have a higher tax valuation on these buildings if those residents above the stores are rented. And one of the things that is necessary for people to have that are renting those spots is someplace to park. Now, there can be a case made for the building owners to lease spots from the city to do that, but it's never been a policy of Platteville, as far as I can tell, to do that. We've also had, over the last year, an inquiry about an individual who wanted to purchase a building who did have tenants upstairs, and one of the reasons he did not buy the building is because he couldn't find leasable parking spaces to provide to his tenants. So I think that is a point to be considered long-term, that has added tax value dollars to the properties and to the tax base in Platteville over the years, which you could have had a lot of empty buildings upstairs and also on the Main Street side, on the retail side, because the building owners couldn't provide that parking space. And then I just have one more comment. If you were considering the person who does rent that space and maybe want to have a different car in there, couldn't a window tag be provided at the time that that space was leased, which would indicate and be able to be moved to any vehicle the individual had? Or if he had a family member coming into town, pass that window tag to them, and that would solve the problem of who is actually parked in that space. Thank you.
Rich Christensen, followed by Mike Oles.
I'm Rich Christensen. I live at 10 South 3rd Street in Platteville, so I'm a downtown resident, and I have been for 19 years. And I've never had a problem finding parking for myself in all those years, not until the Common Council made some changes in June related to the parking permits and Roundtree Commons, when you brought those permits all the way up to Pine Street. I'm pretty disappointed in how long this has dragged on, and no answers being found, and I wouldn't expect any answers to be found, but it's just the process that has been used and the way you've gone about it. It's pretty disappointing. I think what's happening tonight is the same thing that happened June 1st, when the parking permits took effect, in that you are possibly voting on something when most of the downtown residents are gone. They're out of town. They're not at this meeting. Most of them probably don't even know that this is happening. So that's disappointing. What I had to assume, based on this being listed as an action item and all 92 parking spaces being, identified there, that the vote would be on 92. If it's not on 92, I think, that should have been decided beforehand. It's bad that you make these last-minute changes and nobody's prepared for them. I think you did that with a couple of things on the budget at the last minute, and nobody knew that was going to happen, and that looked bad. What I haven't heard throughout this discussion about the downtown parking and the paid parking, the first thing I haven't heard is what is the actual downtown parking problem. I think if we asked the 7 council members individually, we might get 7 different answers. The other thing I haven't heard is, how does this paid parking improve downtown parking in any way? It doesn't. It makes things worse. those spaces are no longer shared. Barb Doss has pointed that out. The RDA is well aware of that. I wish Barb would have described it in the opposite way rather than the downtown residents leaving their spot and then those spots not being available for downtown employees or downtown businesses. I think the bigger problem is when a downtown employee rents a spot and then that spot sits empty all night long, and additional other spots, because you really are starting with all the overnight parking. You're not talking about all the spaces in these parking lots that are daytime parking. So you're really just, you know, targeting the overnight parking, and it's a bigger problem for the downtown residents when those spots are no longer available to them. There's more of a problem than just no longer sharing the spots. You know, you had this as an action item way back in September, and I was prepared to speak at that time. A few things have changed, but not that much has changed. So I'll just read the last couple paragraphs of what I had written up at that time. Apparently, the Common Council has not looked at the numbers related to this resolution. If they have, they're not sharing those numbers with the public. The university students have been back for a few weeks now, and I have looked at the number. It's really very simple. The Common Council is making downtown parking worse. Some council members might know this, some might not. Back in May, you know, the downtown businesses were concerned about losing the 51 parking spaces in the Pine Bonson parking lot. When the Common Council's paid parking takes effect, I calculate the loss to be 75 downtown parking spaces, and that's just for the first phase of paid parking. Just one more point related to the city subsidizing parking for a specific group of people. I don't know that that's true. I think the city is providing parking for everyone. Mr. Killian, you received 2 parking permits from the city. You didn't pay $720 for those parking permits. Anybody that's using any of the lots, it's being subsidized by the city. Anybody that's parking on the street overnight is the city is providing parking for them. There are plenty of people that park their cars on the street every night, all the time. I guess that's all I have. As I said, I wasn't quite prepared for this. I just got back this afternoon, and this surprised me. What you have ready to go tonight? Yes.
Are you by chance on the RDA?
No, I've attended.
Should be.
I've attended a couple of their meetings.
You should be.
Thank you. Mike Olds?
I'm Mike Olds, 310 Division Street, Platteville, Wisconsin. I am on the RDA, and also I am an owner of a business downtown, so I'm very familiar with these problems. There's not a lot more that I can add that hasn't already been said, so I'm going to keep it short, which for an attorney that may seem odd, and I can see President DeLucky laughing. I think Councilperson Barb Doss probably said it best. We want to start out with only about 7 spots because we don't know what that demand is. And I understand President DeLucky's concern that maybe it won't really test what the demand is, but in response to that, I would say that what we're trying to find out initially is who are really interested in this. And one of the reasons we want to find out who are really interested in this is because we don't want to take spots away and give them, or rather have people pay for them, unless they really, really have that need. The university apparently has lots available at the Piggly Wiggly lot and hasn't used up all those. And so the argument that has already been laid out that they're going to find free spots before they pay $30 a month, I think is very accurate, that especially as it relates to some of the students. That being said, one of the things during the process, and we spent a lot of time, as all of you have spent a lot of time on this issue, during the process, one of the things we found is that there are residents, a limited number, and there are owners of businesses who live downtown that find that there is a need to have that 24-hour. And the fact is that many of these people do, in fact, leave their cars sit for 24 hours at a time, plus 24 hours. And they want the convenience of having a place that they can call their own for a parking spot, so they don't have to look for parking spots, or in the event that they have to move the car, they don't want to have to do that. So they're willing to pay that $30. And I think the RDA felt, and at least in my opinion, and my position on it when I voted for the 7 spots, was that by having the 7 that we are proposing, though furthest from Main Street, you're really going to find out if there's a need and a desire. And if you find out that all 7 of those spots get taken, then you know that you probably have a bigger demand than you originally thought. And true, we can probably come back here in a month or 2 months and restructure it. I guess I say that with one caveat. As I sat here and people were bringing that up, and President Dalecki made a really good point, and that is, if you're someone who's on the southeast or very far away from those 7 spots, I guess I would suggest that if you only open up the 7 spots, that those people have a first come, first serve, and that if you have anyone that has a fair distance from those 7 spots that opts to be first come, first serve and take one of those spots, that you give that person the option of taking a spot to another lot when you open up a new lot, if we get to that point. So bottom line, I'm in support of only starting slow rather than diving in feet first into the cold water and just see where we end up.
Thank you for that very short comment.
Yeah, maybe it was a little longer than that.
Thank you. Kathy Austin.
Kathy Austin. I live at 1503 Austin Road, and I have a business at 70 West Main. I'm one of the downtown business owners, and I am a member of the DPA. The DPA was organized originally because of the proposal at the Bonson and Pine Street lot. Since the very beginning, this is going to answer the burning question. Since the beginning, we only wanted to preserve the existing parking and to ensure that proper steps were taken for future projects to preserve existing parking. That's it. We didn't think, yes, occasionally someone would say that they, couldn't find a parking spot, or, somebody would complain that they had to move their car. But the big issue, the main issue in the beginning of all this was just to keep the existing spots, not to provide more parking. This problem it's blown up to a snowball effect, when really in the beginning it was only to keep the existing spots. We're not against progress. We're not asking for a parking ramp or more parking in the downtown area. We just want to keep the spots that we have. And if there's a need for downtown permit parking, do it as it's needed. Downtown businesses just want to have a thriving downtown for their businesses and for their community. Thank you.
Thank you. Back on the council. Would you care to make a motion?
I make a motion we adopt resolution 1301, taking out lot 1, lot 4, lot 5, lot 6, and only leaving in lot 7.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Okay, discussion.
I would amend the motion to include lot 6, 27 stalls.
That motion to amend dies for lack of a second.
I would amend the motion to include lot 5, 26 stalls.
Second.
the motion is second to amend the original motion to include Lot 5,
All right.
the 26. Discussion on that amended, suggested amendment.
I believe that's too many.
I believe it's too many also.
I think it's too many. I think that the 7 stalls is the test plot that we've been looking for. I feel that the location is ideal because I don't believe that shoppers and maybe some employees would park there, but I think primarily it's going to be people who are residents of the downtown and would like to have a safe, secure spot that they know they can park in when they come back to their residence. That was my hope originally when we talked about having a spot where that could be done. We had a young student, I think probably 2 years ago, come to the council and say that she was frightened, actually. She worked a night job and she had to walk 3 or 4 blocks when she would park her car on the south side or the north side, wherever she parked it, at Main Street. And what she wished for was a spot that she knew she could always have and walk to her downtown residence. This is a matter of 2 blocks away. I think it's an ideal location. So I'm not in favor at this point of adding any other spots. I think we do the 7. If there's demand and they get rented, we can look at adding more. I also think it will give us information about what the demand is. And I think that's important to learn. I think this is a learning process. We don't need to add more than 7 tonight.
Any other comments? Roll call vote on the amended motion, please.
I want to hear it complete first, so I'm understanding what we're voting on.
Okay. Would you please read back the motion to amend?
Should we approve Resolution 1301? The original motion is to take out Lot 1, Lot 4, Lot 5, and Lot 6. And the amended motion is to include Lot 5.
So that increases from 7 and another 26, so it would take the total number to 33.
I believe this motion is to approve the amendment, and then you have to go
Right.
back and approve
Right.
the
Right,
parent.
it's just,
So
it's
the
just
amendment would
amending
be
the motion.
just
That's right.
for
Yes.
the additional 26.
So if you want the additional 26, you would vote for the amendment. If you do not, you would vote against.
Okay, I'm gonna vote against it, because I think just lot 7 should be it, so it's no.
Okay, well, we have to call for the vote, so roll call vote, please.
Bonin,
No.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
Nope.
Doss,
No,
Nichols? No. Motion fails.
Okay, we have the original motion before us. Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote on the original motion, please.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
Yes.
Steiner,
No.
Becker,
Yes.
Doss,
yes,
Nichols? Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on then to item C, we have ordinance 13-01, amending the official traffic map to install signs designating assigned parking. Only violators will be towed, and this would just be for one lot, right?
Yep.
So this would be for the lot we just approved, which is
motion
7.
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I do just have a question. How will we know which vehicle has the right to park in that assigned spot? Will there be a permit that they will be hanging from there?
No one has permission to park there unless you've leased the space.
I understand that.
Therefore, the only person that would call the police is the person who leased the space. So if somebody's in your spot, you can call the police and have them towed.
Okay, so the police will not be monitoring this?
No.
You can walk right across the street and talk to them.
Don't have far to go.
We have no need to monitor it if only one person is responsible for each space. Then that person can call and have them towed.
That means if you have somebody else using it with your permission, it's fine, because nobody's
Fine,
gonna call.
yep. We have no need to be concerned.
Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bonin,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes.
Delecky,
Yes.
Steiner,
Yes.
Becker,
Yes.
Doss,
Yes.
Nichols? Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. Under information and discussion tonight, we have item A, the resolution amending the city employee handbook, section 6, regarding hours and pay, specifically section G, overtime. Comment about that?
Certainly. The city of Platteville has a current ruling within our handbook that one of our policies is that the Public Works Department will send, and quite frankly, all of the departments, when the work is shifted away from the regular work schedule, we send employees home with 12 hours notice and say, this is the time that you're expected to report in for work. So our current handbook, it gives management the authority to send employees home with 12 hours notice and to change their regular work schedule. Okay, what has happened is that when the snowstorm came and we tried to implement this, it created a lot of confusion and a lot of frustration among some of our employees. And so in order to address this, I suspended the policy that's in the handbook and asked staff to work with me to develop a policy that they would recommend to the city council. Now, what you see before you is a draft of that copy. I think that it was a situation where the city council is being asked to step away from our existing practice or our existing handbook to accommodate the desires of staff to know their regular work schedule. I believe that there are some frustrations within that, with that current policy, with the current handbook policy. I know that some representatives from the Department of Public Works are here today, and if you have questions, maybe they'd like to talk about it. But there was a little bit of frustration with our existing handbook policy. And so what we've proposed here is a revision or a new draft of that.
And our existing hand policy was drafted how?
The feature or the policy that is controversial is the ability of management to send employees home with 12 hours notice as a manner of changing their regular work week. And by changing the regular work week, management changes their work week in an effort to avoid overtime and compensation for weekend work or evening work. So for example, if we know a snowstorm is coming on Saturday, we could send everybody home on Thursday and say, okay, there's a snowstorm coming in on Saturday instead of working on Thursday.
And that was the intent of the policy.
Yes, that's what's there now.
And that has been in effect?
It has been in effect until the snowstorm, until the most recent snowstorm.
Oh, beginning when?
Oh, goodness. When we approved the employee handbook, I believe. Was that 2011? It was as a result of Act 10. I'm sorry, I don't know that date offhand.
Was it in effect last winter?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's part of the resolution, or December 13th, 2011.
Okay, so it was in effect.
Thanks, Joe.
Other questions?
Are there people who were going to talk, or?
Not on this.
Walt, did you want to talk? Okay. Howard, did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, unless they have a question.
Okay, item B under information is transferring Freudenreich Animal Trust Care funds to the Community Foundation of Southern Wisconsin. And there were some additional supporting documents that were handed out to us on our desk tonight that were appended to this document that was in our packet.
Dwayne, did you speak?
Any comments or questions on that?
The first 3 years, what happens to the interest?
Dwayne, could you speak to this?
As my understanding, and I believe Sue Conley is here from the Community Foundation, but that money is kept there with them, so that it's not available for use for local animal care expenses.
It's not available ever,
Not until after 3 years, as I understand.
but it is available after 3 years.
Right.
Second question, is there a cost as far as a fee or whatever taken from the funds over the period of the funds being in this particular account or whatever you want to
I
call it?
believe there is a fee. I think it's similar to what we did with the Graham Fund monies a number of years ago. Right now, currently, we're not making much interest, so the amount available is not very much. It's decreasing every year with the transfer of this money. we hope to have a lot more money available for
Yes, that's
future
true.
expenses.
But is there a fee for every year that the money is kept in this account?
I believe there is a fee, but I believe
Is that in the document we received tonight?
Sue, could you come forward? Do you have that information? Thank you.
Is there a percentage taken of the interest every year, or what's the setup?
I believe it's 1.25%, and you'll see that on the 4th page of the packet you have.
That's correct.
I hope that's not the only question you can there to answer.
Well,
I'm happy to be here to answer any other questions there might be.
Just for those who don't know you.
Sue Conley, Executive Director of the Community Foundation of Southern Wisconsin.
So this is going to get us a better rate of return and more money to hand out in grants in the long run. At least that's the hope here.
That's the hope. It's important to note that the funds will be invested in many, many things in the stock market. We have $28 million in our investment pool. This would be pooled with those investments. So there could be times when the returns would be negative. It's invested in the stock market. But you won't be using interest because there'll be fund appreciation, there'll be dividends and interest that all play into that. We use a spending policy to determine the amount that's available each year, and it is a look at the balance of the fund for the last 12 quarters. We average that out and then apply a payout rate, which can be anywhere between 4 and 6%. Our board sets that rate every year. So at this point in time, the least amount that you would have available would be 4%. We all want to make sure that we honor the donor's wishes, though, and there would be an advisory committee that would look at this every year and determine how much of that they would actually use. The donor wanted half of the income to stay in the principal of the fund and grow. The income plus appreciation in some years might be 20%, but we would only make 4% available to you, leaving the rest in the fund to grow. So I think that's something that is a little bit different than how the city has run this fund in the past.
Is there a mechanism by which at some point in the future we might want to pull that money out of there, or is it in there?
It would be an irrevocable gift to the community foundation. Now, you mean?
Well, suppose that there is a very high rate of return for a while, and we'd like to hand out more than 6% annually.
That would be against the community foundation's policy, and the board might be open to discussing that with you, but I can't say that, yes, it would be available. Because, you know, one year it might be 20% up, the next year it might be 30% down or whatever. So it's a way of smoothing out those ups and downs of the market.
I understand. It's not unlike how pension funds do it. And it's just that if we end up in a situation where we'd like to do more and we have, you know, if you're going to put half the money to reinvest, then over time, in essence, we're only going to be getting less than we would have been getting otherwise. So.
But more than you're getting now, hopefully.
Well, theoretically.
Yeah.
What's the point then of waiting the 3 years for?
Because we take a look
payout?
back over 3 years, you wouldn't necessarily have to wait the full 3 years, but in the early years, there are zeros in those quarters that the fund didn't exist. And so the average of the fund balance is quite small and the payout would be quite small.
Oh, okay.
Other questions?
I'm purposely staying out of this conversation because I am an employee of the Community Foundation. But Dwayne, correct me if I'm incorrect, but my understanding was that the Freudenreich Animal Care Trust Fund group had suggested keeping the amount for spending for the next 3 years with the city so that there would be money, in other words, transferring the majority of the balance, but keeping, I think it's $1,600 that's available this year. Is that about right?
Well, yeah, that's about 115,500 total in amount, and I've recommended transferring 112,000, so keeping back about 3,500 for the next 3 years.
So that so the city would actually that would be retained, and the city would then actually that would be available to the animal for that program next year, even though there wasn't money from the community foundation. So the group thought if they retained the necessary money for the next couple years in the city budget, and then when, or in wherever it is, in whatever line it's in the budget. So there would be money available each year. The first 2 years, it just wouldn't be available from the community foundation. It would be available because it had been retained by the city.
Oh, good point, okay.
Any other questions?
I also had a question. The will, or the memorandum of understanding where the city took on this fund, it stated that they wanted the city to manage this money to establish and maintain an animal shelter. And then it further went on saying that the principal balance may be spent by the city council for that purpose. Is there a way we could write into this agreement where the city has the right to have a humane society or a shelter built in town, if that should ever come about? Right now, the fund is so small, it won't do that, but at some point, perhaps we would be able to afford that.
We did include that language in the fund
Okay, excellent.
We all want to make sure that we honor the very important community foundation that's what we do, and I know that that's what we do.
Any other questions? Thank you. Item C under information is ordinance repealing section 3.16 of the Arts Board. As everyone on the council, I think, knows, the Arts Board has been, I don't know if I'd call it defunct, but it certainly hasn't met for several years now, and we have a number of appointment slots available week after week after week, for which there never seem to be any applications. And given that the Arts Board has been essentially not meeting at all, it kind of calls into question whether we even need one, since there isn't even anybody doing anything with it. And so we thought we'd put this on here and see if it was of interest to remove it from the city books as a committee, given that we have a number of other arts-related types of activities, including Roundtree Gallery and the museum. And so that's why that's on there. Any comment on that? Marilyn Gottschalk has asked to speak to this, so if you would come forward, please.
Gottschalk, 235 Virgin Avenue. I understand the rationale behind the repeal of the ordinance that created the Arts Board. I was looking into my records, and that ordinance, I think, went into effect in 1982. So there has been a long period of time when the Arts Board was functional and had some people on it who were very committed to supporting and advancing the arts. I'm not here to ask you to not do this, because I think, Mike, you have indicated the problem. We haven't met. I'm not on the Arts Board at this point. I've been involved in it in some degree over the years. But I guess my feeling is that it took some doing to get an ordinance in place to create the Arts Board. And I'm wondering if in a community of this size, we certainly must have some people who are committed to the arts and advancing the arts and would be interested in trying to revive or bring some new life to the Arts Board. So I understand tonight is informational. I'm hoping that maybe tonight will be a little bit of publicity to the people out there in Platteville to tell them that we are in need of some people who are interested in bringing back to life the Arts Board. And if we have such a show of support, should that happen, would you be okay with our attempting one more time around? So that's my point. Larry, were you the one who suggested that this ordinance be repealed?
I don't know where.
Clear off the books?
No, it came when we were going to combine some of the boards and commissions. This was like a year.
This has been discussed way back.
Yeah.
Arts Board was going to be rolled into the Arts and Culture Committee. That's what happened with it. And then Arts Board wasn't meeting.
No.
It hasn't been for a long time.
No.
Marilyn, you've known me for a long time.
Yep.
You know I'm a huge supporter of the
Yes.
arts.
I
But as Mike
can-
said, you know, they haven't been
We've got a
meeting for long
problem,
time.
and I'm not here to say, I don't know how to solve it.
Well, it's my theory, Marilyn, that that the interest in the Arts Board has sort of, you know, flown away because there are other groups that have been
I
formed
agree.
over the years, like FOG, Friends of Our Gallery,
Yeah.
that support Roundtree
Yeah.
Gallery,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
now, of course, we've got Friends of the Platteville Municipal Auditorium, hoping to, you know, renovate the auditorium and
Right.
Platteville Community Theater. I mean, there are a lot of other supporting organizations that support the
I
arts.
agree.
And so it
Yeah.
is my theory that that's what happened with the Arts Board, that people are so busy, including me, you know, on all these other arts boards and commissions,
I
that
agree.
we just run out of time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is.
And we
Isn't that
were
the-
to
the
be an
interest has gone
umbrella
away?
over the arts here in the Platteville. But one factor in the umbrella, the city band, doesn't exist. Platteville Community Theater is in big trouble. So I do understand the rationale behind it. So that's,
I think it's sad too, but you know, you can
Maybe
lead a
it's
horse
time.
to water. I mean, even if Marilyn, even if you can convince 5 or 6 people to be on the Arts Board, still doesn't mean that they're going to come consistently and that you're going to have a quorum. And this, you know, even Roundtree Gallery this year, there were 3 months in a row we did not have a quorum.
yeah.
It gets complicated.
And I think that the function, the direction of the Arts Board has not been clear in the last few years.
That's probably
So
true.
that's part of the problem.
However, I
Okay.
will say, I was the Common Council liaison to the Arts Board when it was regularly meeting.
Yes,
And we did, this was when Gail Schwickrath was president.
yes,
And we did make it our goal to support the renovation of the auditorium.
of the theater. Mm-hmm.
Which was why that report was done.
Right.
And I think why eventually the Friends of the Platteville Municipal Auditorium Board was, you
Right.
know, was made, the committee was made.
It's true. That's true.
I think we still have quite a few people who are interested in this, that they're expressing it in different organizations, not just this one.
That probably would be one way to put it. I guess my other sense is that, again, as I said, I keep looking at a city this size and thinking, why can we not come up with, you know, 5, 6 people who are willing to serve on an arts board and redirect it? I think it needs some kind of redirection. But Patrice, you're right. I mean, people are involved in other aspects of the arts community, so maybe it's time.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Marilyn.
I'll put on my morning band.
Item D tonight is a zoning amendment for parking regulations. The Plan Commission has been meeting and discussing parking, what a shock, for a number of months now, trying to streamline some things as well as potentially create other possibilities for parking, including as an accessory use in commercial places. For instance, existing businesses with excess parking would then be able to apply for a conditional use permit to let that be leased as parking, which is an excess parking capacity we have in this town that right now is not being used, as well as a number of other things dealing with what happens if people build buildings downtown and so on and so forth. And in your packet, you have the draft as went before us at the Plan Commission last night, but there were a couple of very small changes, and only a couple to it. So
So I do have a question on then H, downtown parking. Parent 1, parent C on my copy says keep or delete, question mark. So what happened to,
It was kept.
what happened to keep or delete?
I'm
Was
still-
it keep or was it delete?
I'm still trying to find the place you're looking at.
That would be on your
Page
page 9.
The Plan
Whenever the
Commission.
interior remodeling or renovation of existing buildings adds additional dwelling units, parking spaces shall be provided for these new units at 75% of the amount as enumerated in section 22.09, parent G. Was that keep or delete?
That was a keep, wasn't it, Joe?
Yes.
It was a
That was
key.
a keep. That's a keeper.
Okay, and then there was another blank in,
Just down.
down on, in parent 3, parent B, it was, the written agreement shall be in the form of a lease, contract, easement, or similar instrument, and shall be for a minimum duration of
1 year. Right?
Yes.
1 year.
1 year.
And then the very next paragraph down, C.
They shall have 60 days?
Right, if you start at the word shall and strike, have 60 days within which to, that was struck. So it
If the
reads,
owner of a building or use no longer has the right to maintain or use of, on a separate, the owner of the building,
or use shall, and then strike the rest of that line.
Right there, shall.
Accommodate all required. And that was it. That was all the change there was.
Starting with shall.
they don't have shells? They don't have
No,
60
shall's in
days?
there, shall.
No 60 days.
That
It's
was all
just
the changes.
there.
Has 60 days.
Within
No,
which
that's
to, those 7 words are struck. There's 60 and then 60 numerical, that's the, there's actually,
Start with the word have, strike it.
correct. The rest of that line. I mean, that's all it was. Just get rid of the 60-day thing is all it did. And that
Are
was,
these the total changes then?
So do they have any time?
they don't,
It
no,
doesn't
the
make.
thinking was
you're-
that if you were doing that, you should know ahead of time when things expire and deal with it.
If their contract expires,
Replace it.
if you didn't like it, they're not gonna know about it. Plenty in advance, so.
Okay, well, I'll check with you, Joe, because just striking those 7 words doesn't make any sense in that. That sentence doesn't make sense then.
Sure it does. It just
Not
gets
the
rid
one-
of the 60-day grace period, which means that if you allow the grace period, you'll have a lot of people with 10-month leases. Which is why we struck it. Any other questions about the parking regulations? This is gonna come before us next time and should allow for some additional parking throughout the city as a conditional use in a variety of places, so, assuming that it goes through as a conditional use. Item E is Assistant to Director of Public Works. It's a new position and a new job description. Larry, do you want to have a comment on this?
Certainly. Our Public Works Department is staffed by an engineering technician at the current time. The engineering technician, years ago, used to be an active position with the engineering, the actual designing of our streets and pursuing engineering-related tasks. Since we've contracted engineering out to Delta 3 in our downtown, Delta 3 Engineering, the engineering technician has taken on other responsibilities. And what I'm trying to do is develop a job that encompasses these other responsibilities and better defines the position. So if you're interested in pursuing an assistant to the Director of Public Works, I would recommend we eliminate the engineering technician and transfer that position over to this title. This title includes several changes. The most dominant changes are the addition of stormwater management issues. The stormwater issues under the DNR's guidance is getting more and more complicated, and it deserves the attention of a position. The other issue that we used to do with the engineering technician is ride around with our public works crews to inspect properties. And I'd like to try to get all of the inspection tasks over to the building inspectors department. And so I'd like to discontinue that as a task for the engineering technician.
Questions for Larry?
I do have one question, just a clarification, because I don't know the answer to this. It says a new position besides the stormwater regulation would also be responsible for testing, and then in parentheses, it says elevator, fire detection, sprinklers, generators. Is that something that our fire inspector currently does?
Our fire inspector does some of that. For example, there's work that the Public Works Department does at City Hall relative to the boiler. When we built the new police station, we built in an HVAC system that's rather complicated, and our police department is much more comfortable having someone who is trained in HVAC and systems management as opposed to an officer or someone trained in police protection managing an HVAC system. Some of these systems are computer related and get kind of complicated, and we'd like to have somebody who is trained in that area to better manage those systems. So HVAC at the police station is a concern, something that we want someone to handle. There are regular tests that need to occur on some of the facilities within City Hall. The fire detection system, the sprinklers, and the generator are all things that we want to make sure that someone is responsible for testing.
So again, you're saying the current fire inspector does not do that?
Well, they have inspections that the current fire inspector does, but they don't do the maintenance tests. Howard, do you have anything you'd like to add or correct?
You basically said that. In the past, when we had our custodian who did maintenance work, the custodian would end up doing a lot of these monthly tests. We have that person now, we have a lot of those responsibilities down in the Public Works garage. So what has happened is we're pulling that person back from the street department in order to do a lot of those maintenance type functions. And what we're saying here is if we have the engineering technician do some of those things, then we can free up that person to maintain the streets more than to be up here. He's still going to be needed for some things, but we would reduce that workload for the person down in the street department so that he can actually be out on the street rather than up here as much as he is now. So we're looking at shifting some of those responsibilities around so that hopefully we can have more time for the guys out on the street with plowing, with maintaining our roads and streets. And when we have a person here, we can transfer him from doing, as Larry said, the property inspection and transfer him into more of the building maintenance type functions.
Is this more of a permanent solution, or is this just going to be until upon retirement and then this job won't be there, or is it going to continue?
I think you should think of it as a permanent issue.
And you see that, I see that there's no fiscal effect. That would mean that you believe that the current engineering tech position and the assistant to the director of public works are parallel positions.
That's correct.
Anything else on that?
I have a question about item 1.8 underneath activities. My question is, what is the status of our GIS work here in the city?
We have.
Is it active or is it something wished for, or what are we at?
Okay. We had a contract with a firm to do some GIS work. It's very rudimentary. It does have our tree inventory on there. What we're looking at is this year we have money in the CIP to over the next 3 years to look at improving and enhancing that so that it's more functional and in more areas. And that's one of the things that I'm working with the city manager and other department heads to make happen.
Is that 20,000 per year? Is that the right number?
I thought it was
35.
35.
One of our main goals is to try to get the GIS system on our website so that the public can interact with the mapping system and actually start using that for those purposes.
Other questions? Okay, we have a few things left on the agenda tonight. One is to do a brief work session regarding the Broadway Street Reconstruction Project, and I'd like to have that be brief if we can. And then a couple of closed sessions, one to talk to council about the Kallenbach properties, and the other to discuss city manager performance evaluation. But we'll need to have a motion to go into closed session following the work session.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into closed session. I'm going to read these off so that at least they're in the record. The first closed session is per Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paren 1, paren G, conferring with legal counsel regarding strategy or litigation. This is the Kallenbach properties. And B is per Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paren 1, paren C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation data. And this is the city manager performance evaluation. And then we would come out to adjournment, and there'll be no motions made after the closed session. Okay, we need a roll call motion on those closed sessions.
Bonin? Bonin?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Delecky?
Yes.
Steiner?
Yes.
Becker?
Yes?
Doss?
Yes.
Nichols?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll take about a 5-minute break and then do a quick work session.